Hello, everybody. Please help me welcome Anne-Marie McQueen to the conversation today, which I'm very excited to have, Anne-Marie. So, to give people a little bit of background on you, which I am going to ask you for more, but you are a Canadian health and wellness journalist with more than 25 years of experience and a track record of being a disruptor and early adopter of North American and Middle East media. But then you went on to launch Hotflash Inc., which is where I came across your work. So you launched that in 2020 to help provide balanced global coverage and content about all things peri, post, and menopause. When you started with a weekly newsletter, then you found Substack. Obviously, you found then the podcast, the Instagram, the whole lot. And since then, you really have become a force to be reckoned with in the field of women's health and specifically perimenopause. And what we're going to talk about, those truths and myths around all of this. So, thank you for making the time for me. Huge time difference for us. So, I really appreciate this.
Thanks for having me.
So, before we get into it, can you give us a little bit of background about you and your experience with perimenopause?
Yeah, so I guess I was in perimenopause for many years. Like from my things started to get really hard for me in my early 40s, and I didn't realize anything about perimenopause until I skipped a period when I was about like 47, 48. And and then at that point I thought, well, I'm getting to that age, and that's when I even found out about perimenopause
Mhm.
because we didn't really know about it and people didn't talk about it. And I had written about menopause and the boomers going through menopause as a trend in, I think 2005. And I found that article and there was no mention of perimenopause. And I talked to experts in Canada. So I just don't think the word was used. Hence, women like Gen X women like me, like just didn't really know. And when I started having a hard time in my early 40s, like I started having a lot of really psychological issues, like looking back, um, like nightmares and sleep disruption and really bad anxiety and paranoia. And I developed a really sudden fear of flying, which was crazy because I had been making long haul flights for a couple of years by then, no big deal. And I started just getting like terrorized and I had to drink like a lot to get on the plane. and like I realized that the airport bar was always full. I'd never paid attention to the airport bars before because I was like, oh no, I'm not going to drink. I don't want to be, I want to be hydrated. And then I literally had to have like a triple Jack Daniels to get on the plane. And that's when I noticed all the people drinking. They
Just to
felt
calm
like,
your nerves.
oh
Yeah.
my gosh, it's crazy how many, like if you notice, if you're in an airport, look, because it's really interesting. But yeah, just to calm myself to get on the plane. And all of that was just very odd. And I had a lot of adrenal issues, like my eyelashes fell out. A lot of stuff was going on personally at that time.
Mhm.
But, as we know now, like looking back, it really clocks with these sort of progesterone receding and the resilience dropping and sort of uncovering the things you bring with you.
Mhm.
And I now know that I brought a lot with me, like a chronic stress lifestyle, gut issues, like
Mhm.
IBS since I was 30. My journalism career was incredibly stressful. And then the stuff from childhood that many of us have. And then all the sort of unhealthy ways of coping. And so it really floored me. And I ended up in the ER a couple of times, like chest pain and terrible headaches. And I was probably in front of 10 or 12 doctors, including a naturopathic doctor. And no one ever said anything about perimenopause. Now, we know so much now. But I did see a doctor that helped me a lot with my adrenal exhaustion. And she sort of gave me some tough love about my lifestyle, about how hard I was working and, that kind of thing. So that's like a long way of explaining that it was incredibly difficult for me emotionally. I used to have these terrible stabs of fear that would go through me, morning doom drops. Like it continued on to be so terribly uncomfortable right up until the end of perimenopause.
Mhm.
So, when I realized I was in perimenopause and I started thinking about content, I started looking for content. I didn't
Mhm.
like it. And what's kept me going, I'm not getting rich over this. It's just like it was so awful and it was so like mostly avoidable too, I think. And I just don't want anyone else to suffer. Like truly, I just think of myself all the time and all the times I was so lost. And I just don't want that for women.
I think that's powerful to say suffer. Tony Robbins was on Diary of a CEO recently, and you saw that the most
Yeah.
powerful line that I took from that. And I think as women get older, we do get more in tune with our emotions and we don't want to see others hurt or struggle, probably because we've been there. Most of us have been there and we know what it feels like and how much it hurts. And he said he just has this massive love for humanity and he hates to see anybody suffer, and that's why he does what he does, and clearly that's why you do what you do, even if you're not getting rich from it. It's, can I take someone else's pain away? Can I make a difference? If I can, then that's worth it. That's worth the effort I'm putting in here.
Yeah, and it's such a tricky time, and so many people are coming at you with explaining why it's happening and what you need to do and what you need to take. I also feel really strongly because in all those years, I took a lot of things that probably made me feel worse that I've since realized that, I'm really sensitive to supplements. I'm really sensitive to hormones. So anything that's estrogenic, like I was putting maca in my smoothie every morning. I was throwing the kitchen sink at it, which I think a lot of women do. And I feel really strongly about actually not, being really careful about what you add in because it's such a fragile time. And then I just see so many, like when I say suffer, like I probably picked up that what I just said to you from Tony Robbins, but it resonates so because I do see women suffering so much. And I just talked to a girl at a social event a couple of weeks ago and her anxiety was through the roof. And she was just saying, I'm going to get my hormone therapy upped. And I've come to believe that like a daily nervous system practice, which is difficult for all of us, but short but regular is the number one thing a woman in perimenopause can do. And I was saying to her, she's Irish, and I was saying, could you just do something every day? And she said, well, I read the disbelief in her eyes that she could even do that. Do you know what I mean? Like she
Like it
just
won't make
what
a
I was
difference. Yeah, they think it won't make a
it won't
difference.
make a difference. Maybe that she could even accomplish it. I don't know what's going on. I just saw her eyes were like, no, I won't be able to do that. And I wonder if it's also being able to sit with yourself for 15 minutes or half an hour every day. Like I don't want to give too much about her, but she had one thing that she was doing and now she's transferred it to another. Like the unhealthy coping mechanisms. I had so many of them. And all of these things, I mean, we just need to help ourselves feel safe. That's after 6 years, that is what I feel everyone needs above anything else. No matter what you've gone through, no matter who you are, what age, or where you're at in perimenopause, I would say start that stat. My mom was a nurse. I used to like saying she would tell me to do something stat.
I wonder as well, though, that look of disbelief in her eyes is what many women feel is not, apart from, yeah, it probably won't work, but I've tried so much already and nothing has helped me. So you telling me to find these 15 minutes of Zen or self-care a day, yeah, right, that's not going to make a
Yeah.
difference. If nothing else worked, why would that work?
It's because it's so simple and so subtle, and it does. And anyone who commits to that kind of practice knows. And then when you don't do it, you can see, you can see it. It's so subtle how it works, and when you take it away, it's so subtle how it doesn't work. It's quite something. During COVID, like I mean, I was the same. I would have said the exact same. And during perimenopause, like many women, I doubled down and added like the workouts, and I would be like, okay, I'm gonna go spinning 4 days a week, and then I'll go to hot yoga after that. Like, and I'm running, like being in management. That was like trying to, wrestle myself into
And I
a
better do
non-anxious
yoga
being.
and
Yeah,
everything because I have to take care of myself at this time
yeah,
of life as well. There's an urgency. I'm running out of time. Yeah.
yeah. And chasing a calm, but with like a cloud of anxiety following you. It's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is daily letting your body know that you're safe in just a gentle way, stretching or foam rolling or doing a little yin yoga or a little breath work. It doesn't take a lot. I know this is how I've gotten through the end of menopause, this is how I've changed. And I really noticed it at the beginning of COVID because, like everyone, I lost some work and I was worried about sleeping and it was so uncertain. I was by myself and I started doing yin yoga every night just to make sure I would sleep. I lost weight. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't doing anything extra physically. I was baking like everyone else. And that was, and I felt calm. Because it was like a daily thing that I did. And so anyway, there's a ton of things you can do. I talk about this all the time. I talk about products. I talk about hormone therapy. I just feel like that gives you calm in whatever chaos that's happening.
That's a case of, you hear women, they go on vacation and they just have a bit of fun for a week or two and they come back and they're like, oh my God, I lost 2 pounds. Yes, because you let your body breathe. And when that happens, you just let go of the stress, the inflammation, the fluid retention. It all just dissipated because I hate to say it, you got out of regular life and you had a bit of fun.
It's it's hormone therapy. It's literally, it drives me nuts when I see, there's all this ridiculous, like, you can do this, you can't do this isn't true, that's not true. You'll see posts that, like, anyone who tells you you can balance your hormones, you should get rid of them. You can't balance your hormones. That's absolute malarkey. Of course you can balance your hormones. That's why you feel so good when you come back from vacation.
Mhm.
That's literally, you've been out in the sun, you've been relaxing, you've been sleeping, maybe you've been having vacation sex, you've been eating what you
Laughing.
want, laughing. Like,
Yeah.
it's just the pace. And so you can balance your hormones. That's how that feels. That's what that is.
But then
It's
there's that catch 22, but I can't go on vacation all the time. I have to come back and grind and hustle and which I do think like how we live nowadays, society's expectations, obviously financial demands,
yeah.
all of that affects women more than men. Not that men don't get affected, but we're obviously, like you said in the beginning, especially as we age, we're not as resilient. So it affects us a lot more than it would our male counterparts.
1000%. It does. We know that by the men in our lives. We can see them just being a little less perturbed by everything, just a little more of a solid base. Every guy I've ever gone out with, friends, brother, that's how it's my dad, that's how it's been. I'm a little bit more, I can't remember that word, mercurial. And not all women are like this. I do have some very, very solid friends, but I would say you're right. Like, I do think it affects us more.
Mm. And you're right as well. I do think there's maybe a personality trait as well there in certain women who are more chill, and maybe that's the conversation around the whole trauma thing. Maybe they had the perfect childhood and life growing up. So there's a lot of context to be considered. But over your years, so clearly the conversation around perimenopause in the last 2 years has like peaked. Before that, we had never even heard of it.
Yeah.
We heard menopause, but it was never broken down the way it is now. And over your years in journalism, you must have seen loads of ebbs and flows of all different like health topics come and go and come and go. And then we have the yoga, then we had the keto, the carnivore, perimenopause
Yeah.
now, protein now, creatine's getting a look in.
Yep.
So what have you seen like change around this whole conversation of perimenopause, menopause, that you had to step back and say, no, that's not accurate, or yes, that is accurate. Like, where do you see the narrative and how it manipulates how women think about it?
I mean, where do I start? Like, there are so many things, but I would say the number one thing is that there's this split in the definition of what perimenopause and menopause even is. You know, like, there's what is just biologically incorrect, which is this is a hormone deficiency that needs to be corrected. And, it's sort of an accident of nature. And somehow women were left without these hormones. And you must correct and add to them. And that's the mainstream medical approach. And then it's really torqued up by some people who are just like obsessed with estrogen and replacing it. And always obsessed with only estrogen. That is a really strange phenomenon, considering it's not our only hormone. I call them Emaxis.
Yeah.
Like, because I love cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, and people always say people who are obsessed with Bitcoin, they call them Bitcoin maxis. I mean, they eat the estrogen maximalists sounds so much like the Bitcoin maximalists. Like, they're just like, it's just like with blinders on, not taking anything else into account. It's
I'm
estrogen, and you
sorry
have
to interrupt you. Do you know Carol Peterson?
Carol Peterson.
So
No,
Carol, she works
sounds
on the
familiar.
panel with Dr. Pryor and she helps her out.
Okay.
Anyway, she's here in Canada too, but we had a conversation basically, why are these certain people, and I'm sure I know who you're talking about, why is estrogen the holy grail to them? Why is
So
that all they
weird.
talk about?
It's so. I mean, I've talked to Dr. Pryor about this multiple times, and she's so smart. And estrogen was discovered first. Estrogen is the sort of the commercial component. Even now, when studies come through, and they talk about hormone therapy uptake, they're on estrogen containing hormone therapy, and I'm like, wait a second. Like, there's a whole bunch of women on just testosterone. There's women on progesterone. There's women on DHEA. Why are we not? Why are we leaving them out? This shows you this doesn't make any sense. Just to go back to the way, so if you look at it as a deficiency, which it is not, that's just incorrect. It's simplistic. It creates a problem and it gives you a solution. And the truth of the transition is that it's a mind, body, soul, spiritual community. It's a huge thing in a woman's life. It's when the scales fall from our eyes. Yes, we become more vulnerable in certain ways, but it's huge. I think the adaptation model where, you do go through this transition, but biologically we were designed to go through it. There are backup systems in the body because of environmental mismatches of today. Sometimes women, they can't go through it, and they need hormones, but it more reveals what's been there all along. And the deficiency model doesn't account for all the other things that can be going on, and the adaptation model is just so much richer and fuller. And it's like, I've heard people I respect say over and over, you can't just slap an HRT patch on someone and not look at the root causes first. Then you'll see doctors making fun of people looking for the root causes. So these are some of the crazy things that I see.
Mhm.
But I really think once you see when people are arguing for the deficiency narrative, and these are some really big names, you
Mhm.
start, and once you understand like how narrow that is and how it leaves progesterone out of the conversation, it leaves a whole bunch of discussions about like all the other systems in our body, everything that's interacting, the metabolic system. You start to see how simplistic it is, and then you can really cut through it. But I think if you don't know, you can get really bamboozled. Like, I have friends saying to me, "Oh, I'd love to know what your estrogen levels are," and I'm like, "Well, they would be the estrogen levels of a postmenopausal woman, I would assume." Like, that's I don't need to test. Testing is another huge one that's just crazy. Do you need to test? Do you not need to test? What does the blood level show? The blood level doesn't show the other estrogen that's in your body, that you make in your tissues, all these backup systems where you make it locally or we get new hormone receptors. It's made in other places. And then the way that still in 2026, I'm hearing people say progesterone and progestin, synthetic,
Mhm. Yeah,
used interchangeably, studied in research
it's not the same.
interchangeably, and they're telling us that bioidentical hormone therapy is safer, but it's okay to take synthetic progestins. That's the thing that makes absolutely no sense to
I
me. So
know
that's just a smattering of where I'm like,
when you stop to go actually listen, you're like, that doesn't make sense. If you actually listen, though, you said there, I've had several women come to me looking for help, and their doctor told them that you can do all the diet and lifestyle changes you want, but it won't make much of a difference. Like, that's what they're telling. They won't. And what was the first thing I said to you when we met earlier was sleep is number one. Sleep is
yes,
number one. And I have a new guide, nutrition and hormones, that the very first thing we do, sleep, and then we get the nutrition lifestyle down before I even look at the hormones, before I even look at the detoxification.
love it.
It's all like the sleep. Well, let's just stay on this hormone topic for a minute because I'm pretty sure we're on the same page. If you saw, I know you've had your own panel with Dr. Pryor, Lara Briden, and all, and which makes me think of this. You obviously watched Diary of a CEO. And in the last few months, he had a panel of expert women on discussing female hormones. And it was broken into two parts. I think combined it was like 6 hours. Like it was pretty long. Only
Crazy.
someone like me or you who are in the industry would actually listen that long. Um, and the names, pretty big names there. It infuriated me because as a big progesterone advocate, I'm mentored by Dr. Michael Platt and a few others. I counted. They maybe mentioned progesterone in a flyover mention 3 times through 6 hours, three
Yeah.
times. And I was like, what is now I can't blame Stephen Bartlett. I don't think he knows hormones or he wouldn't even pick up on this. But that infuriated me. He has nearly 15 million subscribers. How many women is this reaching? Why are you being so negligent here? Why do you hate progesterone? Why are you avoiding it? So it looks like you heard that same episode.
Yeah, and the big menopause books, like the New York Times best-selling menopause books, I don't think I checked. It's like it's like the number of times progesterone is mentioned is so minimal. Like I got through one of them into like the third chapter, and I hadn't even heard progesterone yet. And there's a couple of big perimenopause books coming out. Dr. Mary Claire Haver is writing one. Tamsin Fidel, who's a fellow journalist, is writing one. And I am very curious to see what they're going to say about it because this is a different perimenopause is completely different than menopause. That's one of the issues is that it gets mashed together
Yeah.
in one big discussion. And I don't understand it. I think it's so crazy once you see it, but we have so many things like that in the world right now where we have people in their reality tunnels and they just believe what they believe and they're not hearing anything else. And so this entire conversation has been co-opted by this version of reality where estrogen is the most important hormone. And you have it driven by, and Dr. Pryor has said this, that she doesn't really think OBGYNs were the best people for treatment of
Women.
menopause and perimenopause because they're surgeons and not hormone specialists. Now, many of these women who are the biggest voices have become hormone specialists, but not that special because they don't have this understanding. It's a medical school thing. It's literally, I noticed it early on in my podcast. Like I've done almost 200 episodes now, but I noticed early on that when I was talking to someone who doesn't seem to understand the difference or that the difference matters. Like it just doesn't matter.
It does matter.
And that is very weird to me. Like watching someone with just sort of that lack of comprehension at a high level. And I've also seen like one of the big menopause influencing doctors once. She was doing a live and she was talking to people and she said, I know you guys I know you love your progesterone. And she was mocking like people in her community who I guess were saying, well, I want to take progesterone.
And why is that so bad? Why would you mock that?
There's a definite narrative going on that is about progesterone. Anytime I've been talking about it a lot lately, and people just will pile on. And someone said, I don't think we should be, oh my gosh, what was the word? Basically like trumpeting progesterone. I'm like, I don't think we're anywhere close to like, trumpeting wasn't the right word, but it was like a word like that. I'm like, we're not anywhere close to doing
Putting
that. That's like
progesterone on a pedestal.
putting on a pedestal. There was a special word she used, but it was like not anything close to what we're doing. That's what we're doing to estrogen. We could talk about progesterone for the next 25 years and we wouldn't get close to the way it's been ignored. And so there's a narrative. I think it has something to do with the fact that progestin is such a big business. Progestin is in the birth control pill. Progestin is in, because people even say to me, well, what's the difference? There's not very much progestin even used nowadays. And it's like, oh, yeah, there is. I've known 3 different women who didn't know that their combination patch was progestin, not progesterone. They were told it was progesterone. They think they're taking progesterone, and they're taking bioidentical estrogen and a synthetic progestin. I think women should know that. I think they should know that there are slightly higher risks for breast cancer with that combination. I did, and I feel strongly about it because I was put on the pill at 16, and I remember telling my friends, "Oh, this pill is safer because it's just progesterone." Like I was told that. It's not just progesterone, it's progestin.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I could rant about it all day. I mean, I'm
I
just like,
had, and I've spoke about this a lot. I had lovely woman, well-respected doctor on the podcast 2 weeks ago, and we got into the conversation around birth control and IUDs, and she was adamant that no, these IUDs and birth control contain progesterone. Like, no, it's my understand. She said, no, it's my understanding that none of the birth controls or IUDs contain estrogen. They're progesterone. So I respectfully corrected her and I'm like, no, it's not progesterone, it's progestins. And she's like, yeah, you're right. And I was like, but we also know that these progestins have estrogen-like activity too. So to say they're
yeah,
progesterone is big fat lie. Like big fat
yeah.
lie in itself. And most women still tell me, no, I'm on the progesterone only birth control. Which then, with this narrative around estrogen, and there is voices, as me and you know, in our circle at least, that are shouting from the rooftops about progesterone, trying to make a little bit of a dint in the conversation if we can. But just while we're on this narrative around estrogen, what do you think about the, shall I say, timing or coincidence that they removed the black label warning off estrogen as this conversation is on fire?
Well, I know that the conversation that like this wave of awareness that came along with these famous doctors and Oprah and people that I started out on social media with that have blown past me with the hormone therapy narrative. That was supported by the pharmaceutical industry. Like that was in ways, there's so many ways to support things. You sponsor events, you sponsor NGOs that spring up that are formed to create awareness about menopause. Those are two very powerful things. You sponsor continuing education and you drive the conversation. And some of those doctors that I saw early on were very well rounded in the beginning, like during COVID when I had a lot of time to watch them, and it flipped. And so, I don't exactly know what happened. I don't know what happened. And I don't think the black box warning should be on vaginal estrogen necessarily, although I was just at the doctor asking about vaginal estrogen and estradiol for myself. And he said, I want you to come back in 2 months. I want to have do an ultrasound to see if it's affecting your uterus. So the idea that it's completely benign and it does absolutely nothing and it stays local it's so simplistic, and that's the impression you get. And then they took it off everything. And I just, there were people saying things at that press conference that were so wildly unproven that it blew my mind. You had Marty McCary, the head of the FDA, saying, tell your doctor to test your hormones. Mm-hmm. When you have the guiding bodies saying it's best to go on, clinical diagnosis and symptoms because this is a wildly contested area, but like I said before, blood testing of hormones is just that just tells you one part of the story. We have a lot more estrogen in us than what turns up in our blood. And there's all sorts of massaging of that. But I don't really know what's gone on. I just know that there's a lot of lobbying in Washington, and the doctors did a lot of work to raise awareness, but I just can't be as excited because it's just the conversation has got so one-sided, and the claims about preventing cardiovascular disease and dementia are like out of control. Mm-hmm. We don't know that it can prevent cardiovascular disease and dementia. That's not been proven yet. You wouldn't know that. Every study that calls that into question is pretty much ignored. You had people on saying, we can help you live longer. We can, all of the things. So,
well, how do we
I
know?
don't
We
know
haven't been
what's gone
using
on.
it that long.
I know. I
That's
know. I
the,
mean,
yeah.
look, I look at the whole spectrum, right? So I'm willing to be open to the fact that in the fullness of time, if we got, really good data, that perhaps it does in specific cases prevent or act as a preventative for dementia. act as a preventative for cardiovascular disease. But I just don't think that we have that now. And I don't think if you were doing okay and you weren't, I don't think you should be FOMOing onto hormone therapy based on, some observational studies that are contradicted by other observational studies when people aren't even separating out progestin, progesterone. And I wouldn't ever say go on hormone therapy, to prevent those things. That's just like, I think that's super irresponsible. And I had a full cardio workup 3 years ago with a doctor from Pakistan. And I said, should I go on hormone therapy? She said, why would you expose yourself to the risks and side effects when you're healthy? That doesn't make any sense. That's what she said. And I always think of that. Like, offline, you get a different story.
Yeah, so many different stories. But like even if we were to do all these long-term studies on estrogen, we're not doing the same long-term studies on progesterone. We're just not. And like the
No.
narrative around estrogen for bone health, well, Dr. Pryor, she did her own study on no, progesterone may be more important for bone health. And I believe she has done work on the cardiovascular aspect as well. And I don't think we can say, oh, it's just hormones that cause cardiovascular. Me and you would probably both agree that if anything's going to give me a heart attack, it's going to be stress, like at the end of the day.
It's the
And
same things all the time. Like and it's the metabolic, sort of on ramp, right, to disease. But stress is the number one thing, and how you feel about stress. And yeah, it doesn't have any legitimacy because you don't talk about the role of progesterone. As Dr. Pryor likes to say, everywhere estrogen is, progesterone is too. So why isn't anyone talking about it? So it's just ludicrous and nonsense to me.
and progesterone would be our top stress protective hormone. Estrogen can exacerbate the stress response.
Yes.
So now we're saying, well, actually, estrogen that can potentially make cardiovascular disease worse because it also increases inflammation. Progesterone, forget about that. Even though we know that helps to protect you, even reduce inflammation, let's just not talk about that. So, where do you think the Women's Health Initiative study influenced all of this conversation?
It's so hard to unpack this because I know, you hear so often that the WHI was a terrible study. And it's like, no, the estrogen progestin arm had a few issues with it, like looking at the older women and using relative risk to talk about the risk and make it seem like the risks were greater. But every study that I ever hear about the benefits of hormone therapy uses relative risk to make the benefits sound bigger. So I'll see a doctor saying, this reduces the risk of dementia by a whopping 50%. But if you go in, to absolute risk, it's like minuscule. It's like 50%. It doesn't take, if I have my risk of dementia, it doesn't like reduce it. Do you know what I mean? It's not, it's just crazy because people who criticize the Women's Health Initiative for that, which is a big criticism, use relative risk all the time to bump up and buff up their findings. There's a lot of good data that came out of that study that's been built on in observational studies. And I just think there was a really good job done of, calling it into question much more so. But it's very hard to know what to believe because there's another really cool longevity doctor I follow. And she says, I worked on that study and there were a lot of problems with that study. And these are the kind of things that we can never know, right? Like in my career, I've dipped into different areas. I was just working in archaeology and there's a bunch of stuff in archaeology and this person knows this thing about that person and this person knows this thing about how that person does research. These are things that we can't really know from the front. That's a really long-winded answer to your question. I don't know.
I get the feeling, though, that a lot of people say, well, no, we may as well forget about the Women's Health Initiative study completely. It was all debunked. It was all false. But that's not true. There was some very valid takeaways from it. But the grand conversation is, no, let's just forget that even happened. It wasn't accurate.
Yeah, and if you try to talk about any of these things, people will say, well, just read Estrogen Matters, which was the book Avram Blooming and Carol Chavez wrote and published in 2018, which is sort of the catalyst for a lot of this. Like there, this wave now, and that always really frustrates me because it's just so handy because they say read Estrogen Matters, like you haven't read it, and if you read that book, then everything will make sense to you. And it's like, yeah, I read it and it still doesn't make sense to me because of all these gaps that we're talking about, right? So I find that incredibly irritating. Like I know that book has helped a lot of people, and it's encouraged some people to go on hormone therapy that maybe needed it and didn't think they should use it. But I get annoyed at it being used as a blanket, like cover all for any questioning of estrogen. And we are at the point now where people can't even bear to have estrogen questioned in any way. It's very strange. Like a doctor was trying to argue on my Substack the other day that estrogen is protective always, and its effects are muted by, she said, progesterone. I know she meant progestin. She said progesterone. And it's like, I don't know how you can say that. I really don't know I don't know how you can say that it's muted by progestin. I think maybe progestin's acting differently in tissues. So when it's there, maybe estrogen is protective, but I don't know what the mechanisms are. I'm not that deep into it. But this person also said I said about the slightly higher breast cancer risk from estrogen and progestin, and she said that's not what it found. And I was like, I don't know how to argue with you. That's what it found. Like I'm not trying to argue. That's there's just a tendency to like this weird blanket. You know what it's like now though in this world, right? When people just believe one
Everyone
thing,
wants
like
to have something to defend. Everyone
yeah.
needs to get defensive or angry about something, whether or not it's climate change or estrogen or politics. There's something. Let me get my rage out somewhere.
Yeah, and then people have truly been in like algorithmic confirmation bias echo chambers for years and years and years, and if in this conversation they have been as well. And that's why I say, like, please don't make again with Tony Robbins, no, don't make anyone your guru. Like I call these doctors Dr. Menopause gurus because their followers are hanging on everything they say, and if I ever say anything that calls it into question, they tag them like as
Yeah.
if Mary Claire Haver, I've had her on my podcast, but as if she's going to come over to my account and like see what I'm up to. Like she's a busy woman. She's like, doing big things. The thought that you would tag one person when you read something that you didn't agree with, tag someone, you wouldn't just go look into it. Like, it's really hard to keep an open mind now, but I find almost everything I think I believe, if I just go look into it, it's not really what happened.
There's so many
Right?
echo chambers. It
Oh,
annoys me. I've been in health and nutrition for almost 20 years and a lot of experience, but there's certain mind frames, even in some of the people we have mutual connection with, and they're so dogmatic that there's no other way, only my way works. Like I even get this, and I'm going to say this, the pro-metabolic community, I'm involved in them. I do a lot of their work, but their way is the only way that's going to fix your metabolism. And no, I've been doing this for so long. There's so many ways. So,
thank you
but
so much for saying that because I get really irritated with. I've just blocked. So I have a tool coming to help people understand hormone therapy, and I've just blocked it out. Like we've got people giving you perimenopause doses, like your reproductive level doses. And we've got it all the way to people who say, don't even touch a chickpea. It's got estrogen in it. Like,
mm,
and, and when you look at the groups that are the most vocal and like my way is right, it's like the estrogen maximalists and the pro metabolic community. And the pro metabolic, they make a ton of sense to me, a
yeah.
ton. But it's not helping anyone when you say this way is the only way. And from your work, and I know from all the women I talk to that there are other ways around it. I do believe some women need estrogen. I don't think everyone can go into an intense exercise and nutrition program when people are going through a lot of stuff. They don't have the money to. Progesterone doesn't work for everyone. So it's interesting that you say that. I get really I find it really off-putting when people are doing this. It's not we don't have room for this kind of like elbows up.
Because it's almost a guarantee. A woman will follow these people, and you're guaranteed this way of
Yeah.
eating or whatever it is going to fix you. And if it doesn't, you're not doing it right or you're the failure. That
Yeah.
that's what I pick up. And I use a lot of, I'm the type of the person that I speak to everybody. I don't want to be in an echo chamber. And they have lost their temper with me a few times for saying stuff that, oh, that's not pro-metabolic. I don't care. I know it works. I've been doing it for a long time. I'll do whatever I need to do. But that notion of like only our way works, it's damaging because, like I said, if it doesn't work, well, was I doing something wrong? Was I not doing it right? Was like the woman
Yeah.
will take that blame and sense of failure onto herself. And no, it may be that you're just a different person and orange juice doesn't work for you.
Yeah. And like a lot of people are talking about perimenopause and menopause that haven't been through it yet or are men. So I just want to say that having, as someone who's been through it, it is the transition of your life. It is like, like it's a Jungian to the depths situation. And to think that you can just like eat a certain diet and lift heavy weights and, maybe address your trauma and then you're going to be like, fine. And if you don't, if you're not fine, it's because you're not doing it that way. This is all nonsense. This is like, I feel like what you're being called to do as a woman going through menopause is to stop putting your trust in the people outside of you who are telling you what's happening to your body and to try and figure this out for yourself. So I don't like the idea that you are in this program and you have to do it this specific way. I really think you need to listen to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's, every woman is very individual. I've had someone say, because I can't take hormones and I really don't react well to progesterone, but the bioenergetic people don't like to hear that at all, right? They say that's because of how I'm eating or it's, this or that. And I find it really irritating to be told by someone who doesn't know anything about me why something's not working for me. This is a whole emerging area. And there's a woman I've interviewed, Paula Rastrick. She's really interesting. She's a psychotherapist in the UK, was overprescribed hormone therapy and really almost lost her mind. And she thinks in a couple of years we'll have trauma-informed hormone therapy prescribers, people who actually understand that there are sensitive women who, because of neurodivergence or whatever else, should not be prescribed hormone therapy in the same way, whether it's progesterone or estrogen. Like, these are the things we don't know. So I get real frustrated at I don't know what to say to it because it's very easy to be that sure when you're not taking into account all of the other things that exist that are true, which you are doing.
Yeah, it makes me question as well experience. Have you only been working in one bubble? Definitely
Yeah.
not trying to say I'm better, but maybe because I've worked in multiple countries, I have a bit of a different perspective. But speaking of trauma, we know the research is there that women who have experienced trauma, especially in early childhood, and even more stress across their life, they tend to have a harder time with perimenopause symptoms than a woman who, like we said, has had more of an easy life.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many variables. Like the trauma thing is huge. And I think none of us get to middle age without something that we've buried that we're not looking at, and this stuff comes up for review, whether it's your relationship and how you've been in a relationship, your family, childhood stuff, all of that stuff is huge. But, there's so many other modalities helping women. Like you're helping women your way. Ayurvedic specialists are helping women. I was helped by homeopathy. I get tons of eye rolling when I say this, but it's true, right? Like it's true. All of these. And then you have women living in Tanzania and they're hunter gatherers and they're killing it and they never had any hormone therapy and they don't have any fractures. And you have the Mayan women of the Yucatan who have regular bone loss of aging, but they're so active that they don't have any fractures either, but they're not lifting heavy in the gym. They're not, covered in these like slabs of muscle. There's a bunch of ways to go through this. And if you're dogmatic about it, you're going to miss these subtleties. I think you're going to miss it. It's such a tender time, honestly, especially like the year when you don't have your period. Like that was just so profound for me. And I was doing a lot of inner work. It's deep. It's huge if you let it be. And I don't like the idea of thinking that you can sort of like get around it. It's kind of like grief.
Yeah, I think we both agreed that you have to start with the nutrition, lifestyle, self-care. Look as well at where is the majority of your stress coming from. I know this is easier said than done because, again, societal demands, you need to work to keep a roof over your head, to feed your children. I get it. But what could you maybe cut back on a little bit? And where are you maybe not prioritizing yourself and your needs enough? And then we'll have the discussion about maybe hormone therapy or maybe some herbal medicine or something. But starting with the basics, which back to that woman you spoke to with reading, and she like, no, that's not going to work. This sounds so basic that it couldn't make a difference, but it's exactly the thing that will make the difference.
Yeah. So people just don't, I don't know why. I think we've just been so conditioned that we need to buy and do all these things. And I think all these podcasts, like I have a podcast too. I love talking about this stuff, but sometimes I think it's just, I don't know if it's done us a service because the basic food that you put in your mouth that powers your body, that is like every bite you take is giving you energy. That's the crux of it, right? That's like, that's influencing everything. Your circadian rhythm. If you, so many people are taking their phones to bed, they're looking at their phones in the middle of the night, they're looking at their phones in the morning. Like, this is just terrible. Like, this is just, we need sunlight, and we've told we're told to stay out of the sun, and we're told to like smother ourselves in sunscreen. And these are just like, there's just some basic things that if you can get them in place, I feel like I sort of have a fix it fast list. It's like you need to get sun every day and go for a walk, do some sort of grounding, watch your screen time, take magnesium, minerals, and get your sleep. Like, just make sure you're protecting your sleep and doing something chill before bed. I feel like I don't know. We don't want to do it, right? I think we just want to. Everyone wants one thing. Like you can see that all over the place. They want it to be one thing, one cause, and they want it to be one thing, one fix. But there's multiple causes and there's multiple things to do. I call perimenopause the messy beach. It's like the tide goes out and there's a bunch of garbage left on the beach, and it's your garbage, and you have to figure out what it is and how to deal with it. That's your job.
Yeah, it's true. And a lot of these symptoms and even diseases that we would associate with perimenopause, sometimes they're not the perimenopause. They're your diet lifestyle practices. So we'll wrap up with this. One thing you mentioned the book, and I have a returning podcast guest on next week, and literally the topic of the conversation is the importance of books. So I
Mm.
think if books are such an undervalued health tool, like it's crazy to me. So part of my clients' evening routine is I encourage them to read paper, not Kindles, not
Yes.
phones, paper. Find a
So
paper
good.
book. It's so, I'm going to say this simply, it's so healthy. It is so
It's
health,
so
so
beautiful.
good for
Yeah.
you. As someone who lives in the world of health and science, and that's all I do every day, everyone who follows me knows I'm like the biggest Alice in Wonderland fan. So of course I've read that, and I read all the different variations of Alice in Wonderland, like Alice's sister, her friend, like because there's a lot of writers out there who do spin-offs of all these fairy tales,
Yeah.
like the original ones. And a chapter a night is just like when you are in a story that you love, you're on an adventure, you're in a magical land for me. And you
Yep.
have to focus on the text. You know this as a journalist. When you are focused on text, you can't think of anything else at all.
No.
Like everything else is gone. And it's just that that just breath of fresh air. I can relax. I've got a tiny mini vacation for those 10 minutes, and now I can go off into dreamland. And it just is so important, and it's so undervalued because now all we want to do is watch Netflix and computer. And actually, another guest I spoke to on Monday, this is what they said is books are a way to escape reality, which a lot of people want. But unlike me and you, what are other people doing to escape reality? They're watching Netflix, they're comfort eating, they're on video games nonstop, maybe they're using alcohol, narcotics. That's their escape. If you find yourself a really good book, I think you will find what you're looking for.
It is the best part of my day when I get into bed. And I always read a nonfiction and a fiction book at the same time. And and I can't read for very long because I have such a Pavlovian response with it that it's bedtime. So I'll find myself getting tired usually before the end of the chapter, just because I've been doing it for so many years. Um, yeah, I think it would be great if everyone could get themselves a nightly reading habit.
Yeah.
I know it's
Well,
hard though because a lot of people have like TVs in the bedroom and their husband likes to watch TV and all that sort of thing. But
I
yeah,
said
that's non-negotiable. Next relationship, that's a non-negotiable for me. My bedtime reading.
Oh, we don't have TV in our room, but it's a client of mine, I said to her yesterday, you need to, I don't know if you've watched GoDaddy with Mel Gibson and Will Ferrell and all. It's a comedy, or not GoDaddy, Daddy's Home. And there's a part where Mel Gibson says, you got to put the hammer down. And I said to her, you got to put the hammer down. It's
Yeah.
time to make some boundaries. Because
Yes.
if he keeps doing this, he's not going to be around to enjoy life with you. Like, so.
Well, those boundaries that we haven't put, that's another job that comes up in menopause and perimenopause. You will just find yourself starting to place them because you can't not have them anymore. A lot of us have lived a life of no boundaries, so men are waking up to this, I think.
Yeah. Anne-Marie, this has been awesome. Thank you for making the time for me.
Oh, thanks for
Um,
having me.
maybe we can do it again in a few months, but um,
I would love it. I love speaking to people who are okay with being curious and not being so sure. It's just so rare these days. So it's lovely to talk to you.
I'm so unsure of myself in a way that I have no choice but to keep looking. I'm so unsure. It's that old saying of recognizing that you actually don't know everything.
Yeah, we don't know what we don't know. And there's a lot of people who don't know that. And that always makes me nervous. Yeah. When I find a kindred spirit who knows it, I feel good.
So
I
where
do
can
feel good.
people find you, Anne-Marie, and follow your work?
Hotflash Inc. everywhere. My website is hotflashinc.com. All social media, Hotflash Inc. And I have a Substack. It's a little bit confusing because I have the website and you can sign up for my newsletter and find out everything I'm doing there. But I also you can find me on Substack. I publish my newsletters there too.
Awesome. I'll add everything as always. Thank you
Thank
for your
you.
time.
Thank you so much.